The following contains full spoilers for Final Fantasy XIII. Please check the description for more information. Final Fantasy XIII, Episode 0, Promise. Part 7, Tomorrow. Chapter 1. It was on that day the tragedy fell upon us. On the earth of the great spirit of Pulse, a terrible creature flew from the den of Lindsay. With its cursed right hand, it rent the earth, splitting it into 1,000 fragments which flew to strike the people who lived on the land. With its cursed left hand, it tore down the mountains, crumbling them into 10,000 fragments, which flew to slaughter the creatures that crawled along the land. With both of its cursed hands, it pulled up the life-giving river and sent it crashing down on both the people and the creatures of the land, and washed them away. It devoured the fruits of the earth with which would become food for the people. It devoured the fruits of the earth with which would become food for the people. It took the fertile lands with its hands, rolling it up and carrying it away. Metals which slept deep within the earth it tore out with its cursed right hand, stole with its cursed left hand, and then this too it carried away. Buildings it turned to rubble and carried away, without a trace left behind. The only thing wasted was the countless lives of the people. Screams of pain and terror filled the earth, but the destruction continued. Soon, the only sound left was the silence of death. On completing its atrocious acts, it flew once more into the sky. Only 2 children, now homeless and shaking, watched it as it went. Watching it return to that den of vipers, that round den of thieves which floated in the sky. In the eyes of one child, anger was born, and in the eyes of the other, sadness. On this day the tragedy fell, and 2 seeds were planted in the earth. Chapter 2. It was on that day 2 girl children entered the temple. One already had the eyes of an adult, while the other still had the eyes of a child. Priests in clothes of red, black, and purple led the girl with the eyes of an adult, while the girl with the eyes of a child followed after. Before the endless stairs, the red priest said to the girl children, "You must leave your polluted weapons behind. From here up on to the chamber of the foul sea, it is forbidden to take the filth of the earth." The girl children left their weapons at that place. "You'll give me a better weapon once I'm on the sea, right?" The girl with the eyes of an adult spoke, using words that did not befit that place. The 3 priests did not heed her words, simply ordering them to follow. As they climbed the stairs, each of the girls kept secret the feelings in each of their hearts. They had kept it secret for this day, until this day, forever. They climbed the stairs and then would stop, lifting themselves in prayer, before continuing on up the steps. This they did 10 and 3 times, before they reached the gate of beginnings. Then the priest in black said to the girl children, "This door is a door of trials. It will turn away those who hold evil in their hearts, and lead on those who hold the Holy Spirit." The girl with the eyes of an adult knelt before the door, and prayed. The girl with the eyes of a child followed suit. The symbol on the door glowed red, and the door opened. "Thou have been accepted by the gate of beginnings. Take your heart, which contains the Holy Spirit, and continue on to the chamber of the foul sea." The 3 priests and the 2 girl children passed through the door, and left behind the hallway of 10 and 3. "Cheer up! But it's not you who will be turned into the sea, but me. There's no reason for you to be scared. But don't worry." The girl with the eyes of an adult smiled, while the girl with the eyes of a child stared at her feet. The 3 priests said nothing. They climbed the stairs and then would stop, lifting themselves in prayer, before continuing on up the steps. This they did 10 and 3 times, before they reached the gate at the center. Then the priest in purple said to the girl children, "This door is a door of trials. It will turn away those who hold weakness in their hearts, and lead on those who hold strength." The girl with the eyes of an adult knelt before the door, and prayed. The girl with the eyes of a child followed suit. The symbol on the door glowed red, and the door opened. "Thou have been accepted by the gate of the center. Take your heart, which contains strength, and continue on to the chamber of the foul sea." The 3 priests and the 2 girl children passed through the door, and left behind the hallway of 10 and 3. "Damn, these are some long stairs. We could have just taken an elevator or something, yeah? This is overdoing it just a tad, don't you think?" "You shouldn't say stuff like that. The priest said this is supposed to be a test for you to become out of the sea."
A test is great and all, but these priests are so weak. What can they do?
The girl with the eyes of an adult laughed, while the girl with the eyes of a child chided her. The 3 priests, of course, said nothing. They climbed the stairs and then would stop, lifting themselves in prayer, before continuing on up the steps. This they did 10 and 3 times before they reached the gate of endings. Then the priest in red said to the girl children, "This door is a door of trials. It will turn away those who hold greed in their hearts, and lead on those who hold honor." The girl with the eyes of an adult knelt before the door, and prayed. The girl with the eyes of a child followed suit. The symbol on the door glowed red, and the door opened. "Thou have been accepted by the gate of ending. Take your heart, which contains honor, and continue on to the chamber of the foul sea." The 3 priests and the 2 girl children passed through the door, and left behind the hallway of 10 and 3, reaching the final stair. At the top of the stairway 10 priests stood, holy spears in hand, guarding the door to the foul sea.
"This is as far as you go, but it will be all right."
The 3 priests led the girl with the eyes of an adult up the final stair. Then 10 and 3 priests surrounded her and lifted their arms in prayer. "Chosen one, one who will become a lassie. Leave behind evil, hold close the Holy Spirit. Leave behind weakness, hold close strength. Leave behind greed, hold close honor. Continue on to the chamber of the foul sea. Receive your power, receive your focus, become one with the foul sea, and stand against heaven." The door began to open, and the girl with the eyes of an adult left the priests behind to walk through it. She yelled, "Foul sea anima! I have something I need to say to you. Are you listening?" The priests held on to the girl, but she shook them off and continued yelling, "Why are you here? It should be easy for a foul sea like you to crush Cocoon. Why don't you go destroy Lindsay right now, instead of making all these lassie? Wouldn't it be faster to just get all the foul sea together and go fight them yourselves? Can you not figure that out for yourself, even though you're a foul sea?" The priests raised their spears and held the girl down. "Why, you insolent! This is foul sea anima! How dare you speak to it this way?" The girl shook them off and grabbed one of their spears. With it in hand, she stormed into the foul sea's chamber. "How many lassie have become Seath while you sit here and do nothing? How many homes have been lost, while your friends do nothing but dig holes?" The priest chased after the girl. "How dare! You shall not take another step into the foul sea's chamber!" The girl laid flat all the priests who followed her with her spear, and continued on into the chamber. "I'll become a lassie for you. I'll destroy as many demons as you like, but I just can't stand that you're sitting here doing nothing." The red priest, the black priest, and the purple priest stood in front of the foul sea and pushed the girl back. "Do you truly think a girl like you could have anything to say to the foul sea? Leave here!" "I'm only telling the truth. That foul sea is a fool. Just what does it think about human lives? Nothing!" The purple priest answered coldly. "Human lives? They're nothing but orphans." The black priest sneered. "The only reason they take care of orphans is so they can become lassie. There is no other way to use them." The red priest spat. "You're nothing but a fool. You couldn't even read the true intentions of those who took care of you." The girl's eyes burned with anger. "Don't insult our home!" Enraged, the girl stabbed the red priest, then defeated both the black priest and the purple priest. She turned to face foul sea anima. "This is all your fault. Our friends being turned into Seath. The Cocoon foul sea coming here and doing as it pleases. It's all because of you. I'll destroy you!" The girl rushed it with her spear, but its hands came out of nowhere, hitting her and throwing her to the floor. Her spear was flung far away from her. The 10 priests rushed in and surrounded her, pointing at her with their spears. "Foolish girl! You must die! Traitor! You must die!" The girl didn't move. The 10 priests slowly raised their spears. "Please wait!" The girl with the eyes of a child ran to her side and covered her with her body. "Please forgive her." "She has insulted foul sea anima and treated our priests as fools. Our sins are too great." "Then let me atone for them." The fallen girl's lips moved, pleading her to stop, but the girl with the eyes of a child paid her no heed, yelling, "Please make the both of us into lassie that will fight against Cocoon." All 10 spears stopped at once, and their bearers looked down on the girls. They gathered together to speak. "You can't. No. It will be my turn next anyway. I want us to be together." One girl held the other and smiled. "Ever since we entered the temple, I'd been thinking about it. I would say, make both of us into lassie. But
We might be orphans, but we were raised together. We're family. We can protect everyone together.
The 10 priests surrounded the 2 girls and raised their arms in prayer, praying that these 2 be turned into the sea.
We'll be together forever. No matter what happens, we'll never be apart.
Chapter 3.
We'll be together forever. No matter what happens, we'll never be apart. That's what I promised so long ago,
Vanille whispered as she walked along the promenade, looking out towards the ocean. In the distance you could see the temple. Falsi Anima was still inside there.
I'm sorry I have to break that promise.
She apologized to Fang, wherever Fang might be. Perhaps she was at the temple, even now. Surrounded by Cocoon soldiers, no one would be able to get in or out. Yesterday she saw it on the news. A Pulse Falsi was found in the Bodhum Pulse vestige. She had stopped at a rest area in the shopping mall. A screen was on the wall, and on it, the temple could be clearly seen. Surrounding the temple were army vehicles and armed soldiers. During the middle of the report, the people around her began to panic. Knowing that she must get to the temple, Vanille ran toward it, only to look up and see airships above her. The news ran on every screen and blared from every speaker. Bodhum would now be barricaded for the protection of Cocoon citizens. Their worry turned to anger. Then, the soldiers began making threats against the civilians. This frightened Vanille so much that she fled the shopping mall, running along the promenade and turning to a place where she could see the temple. But what she found there? All the roads leading to the temple were blocked off. This was something that hadn't been shown on the news. Military vehicles surrounded the place. There was no way to even get close to it anymore. No, she didn't even think she would be able to stay here for very long, even to look at it. Soldiers were coming closer. Had they seen her? Not taking any chances, Vanille turned right around and ran back to the shopping mall. They hadn't followed her. That must mean they hadn't planned on capturing her. Perhaps they had just wanted to tell her that the area was off limits. It was too late now, but she wished she hadn't left her weapon behind in the temple. Now she was all alone in a city she didn't know, unable to protect herself. She felt like crying.
Fang, where are you?
At the energy plant, Fang had acted as a decoy to allow Vanille to escape. She had run straight at the soldiers, all alone. Vanille had managed to escape, but ever since then, she had seen no sign of Fang.
I want Fang.
Vanille walked, hardly realizing where she was going, that thought circling her mind. When she looked up, she found she was now at Bodhum Station. Then Vanille thought that perhaps Fang hadn't returned to Bodhum after all. She could still be somewhere in Uriday Gorge.
I'll be able to find her if I go to Uriday.
Vanille ran towards the station, but again was surprised by what she found. The walkway was completely blocked off. Then she remembered hearing on the news that the whole city had been barricaded. There were people in front of the station that looked like tourists, arguing with the soldiers.
We aren't Bodhum citizens! I have to return to Eden tomorrow. I have an important meeting. We're from Palimpolum. At least let my son return home.
Everyone was trying their best to make themselves heard.
I've seen something like this before,
Vanille thought, but then they knew if they waited they would be able to return home. They still had looked worried. It was 8 days ago. After the accident, both Uriday Station and the airship landing strip had been closed off. Armed soldiers had come, and the people there had argued with them, demanding to be freed. Though they had complained that they needed to get to work, or that they were going to miss their airship flight home, they still followed the soldiers' directions, because the soldiers told them that once they had gone through an ID check, they would be put on the next train to Bodhum. So they gathered at the plaza in front of the energy plant, and waited in the tents that had been set up for them. Of course, since Vanille was not from Cocoon, she didn't have an ID. When she searched around for a chance to escape, her eyes fell on soldiers placing cards on machines. ID must mean those cards they had picked up earlier, she realized. They had stolen them from those 2 boys they had met in town. Because of these cards, they had been able to get food and ride on the train to Uriday. Vanille took out the stolen card and looked at it. She wasn't sure if she could even use it. They had only figured out how to use Fang's card by accident, and had yet to try this one. What would she do if she couldn't use it? Even worse, what if they found out she had stolen it? Come on, give me your card already. Vanille looked up quickly and found a soldier holding a slim machine standing right in front of her. Hoping it would work, but not feeling too confident, Vanille held out her card. She wondered if they would drag her into a different room for questioning. Perhaps they would tie her up immediately. Or maybe they would shoot her where she stood. She squeezed her eyes shut. Would you hurry up? I knew it, Vanille thought. She slumped. It would be so pathetic to be captured now, but there were so many soldiers surrounding her, and then there were all these people. What the hell are you doing? I need to get on to the next one. Vanille looked up in surprise. The soldier returned the card to her. What? Once you've checked out, go stand in the line over there. Before she could ask what he meant, the soldier turned to the next person and took their card. It seemed the stolen card had been accepted as her ID. Vanille lined up with the others who had been checked out and boarded the next train to Bodhum. She waited on the station platform, hoping that Fang would arrive, but saw no trace of her. She returned to the temple, but there was no food, and she couldn't sleep. It was her first night alone, ever, she realized. Fang had always been by her side. At their village, the other children had been there too. Once they became lassie, the two of them had been alone again, but she always had Fang to sleep next to. She had never slept alone. Looking for food, Vanille went to the shopping mall, but she had never used this card before and she wasn't sure she could do it. While she had been able to use it as ID in Uriday, she didn't know if she could use it for shopping. Vanille spent a few minutes standing in front of the shop, nervously clutching the card in her hands. It was seeing that white bird again that made her pluck up her courage and finally enter the store. It was the same strange-looking bird they had seen when they had stolen these cards. It stood perched on the far side roof, staring down at her. It scared Vanille so much that she ran into the shop just to get away from it. Now in the shop, the only thing she could do was follow the other customers' examples. She made her purchases and used the card to check out. It was easier than she thought it would be. Now she could see what their life was like. XIII was like a peaceful paradise. Perhaps because they lived such quiet lives, the people here were peaceful, and that was why she never felt in danger as long as she was within the city. Despite being alone, without Fang, she didn't feel nervous here anymore, but she couldn't forget the girl and young boy that had gotten mixed up in their problems. The guilt she felt towards them was like a thorn sticking in her chest. And then Vanille met that girl on the beach. "What are you doing over there?" She felt the gun at her back. Vanille came back from her musings with a start. It was a soldier. PSICOM. Whenever that name was mentioned, the expression on people's faces turned stony and cold. Until a few days ago, no soldiers had been here. Everyone had looked calm and peaceful. She had allowed herself to feel that way too.
"I'm sorry,"
Vanille said. Perhaps there was a tearful sound in her voice, but he lowered his gun and spoke in a softer voice. "They're starting check-in at the station. You'd better hurry." Vanille ran without turning back. She wouldn't be coming here again. From the moment they announced it on the news yesterday, this paradise had disappeared. A pulse fal'Cie had been found. The whole of Bodhum was being barricaded. That alone was already the worst possible news for the people who lived there. Just those two announcements, and the city was in an uproar. Was there anyone who imagined it could become worse? It had been in the afternoon when the news had broken. Vanille had been unable to return to the temple or find Fang, and so she was walking along the shopping mall. She tried to stay in well-populated places, away from soldiers. A purge to pulse. At first Vanille didn't know what that meant. She might not have been the only one. When the news was broadcast, everyone grew quiet. Then she realized they were afraid. People were running around, screaming and crying. Maybe they thought they could run away from their fate. Vanille could only watch them in amazement. She had known that the people on XIII hated Pulse, but she realized that she hadn't really understood. They were so scared of Pulse that they lost all reason. Where they were running to, she didn't know. Perhaps they were running to the station, or their home. Small fights broke out everywhere. Women spoke in shrill voices, and children fell and broke into tears. Vanille stood close to the building and watched them. She shivered and couldn't move a step from where she stood.
"Are these the same people who had watched the fireworks the night before?"
she thought. Those people had been having fun, laughing and talking with each other. Those people had been happy. Their faces had been filled with hope as they prayed for their dreams to come true. Not even one day had passed since then. And now? She was scared, and sad, and felt like crying. A fiery pain burned behind her eyes, and she looked down at her feet. Then, out of the noise, words reached her ears. Vanille looked up in surprise. She thought she'd heard someone say, "The Pulse fal'Cie will be sent along with the purge train to be returned to Pulse." She would have to listen to the news program one more time, just to make sure. fal'Cie Anima would be sent to Pulse. It would be returned to Grand Pulse. Was it true? But then what about their focus? No, even if fal'Cie Anima wasn't in XIII, their focus wouldn't change. It was both she and Fang who would complete their focus, not the fal'Cie. Then she realized that if she remained in Bodhum, she would be purged along with everyone else. Not that she had much of a choice, since all ways in and out of Bodhum were closed off. But if she returned to Grand Pulse, she wouldn't be able to complete her focus. Her legs grew weak and she slumped onto the ground. How could she have not realized this before? She held her knees and stayed that way until night fell. When she finally stood up, she was surprised to see it was night. There was no one left in the shopping mall. Vanille slipped past the soldiers and walked down to the beach. This is where everyone had stood to watch the fireworks. Of course no one was here at this time. The cafe was closed. Even though it had only been one day, it seemed as though a completely different place from the night before. All was quiet. The only sound was of the waves rolling in and out. Unlike Grand Pulse, this ocean didn't smell of salt. but Vanille had liked it here.
"Goodbye,"
she whispered, and turned back the way she had come. She walked a little further and came upon a field. It was the field they had stolen vegetables from that first day they had woken up. The smell of earth and growing things overwhelmed her.
"Perhaps Fang will come here,"
she thought, and tears ran down her cheeks.
"I know," she thought. "Fang won't come. I'll never see her again. Never again."
Vanille cried, as a small child cries, yelling and screaming, and then she slept. The shopping mall, as always, was filled with people, but unlike yesterday, no one was running around. As one, they all moved in the same direction. The expression on their faces was dark, and they looked down at their feet as they walked. They were heading towards the station to board the purge train. The people of Cocoon thought that Pulse is hell. Vanille had realized, watching everyone yesterday, that they equated being sent to Pulse as a death sentence.
"But it's not like that,"
Vanille couldn't help but think. Sure, the climate is harsh, and there are many vicious monsters there. You wouldn't be able to walk around there unarmed like you can on Cocoon. The Fang and herself were born and raised on Grand Pulse. You could live there as long as everyone worked together. On Grand Pulse, there were wide, open fields and an endless sky. There was sunlight and greenery. Vanille wanted to show all this to the people of Cocoon, even though she knew it was impossible. It was quiet. Too quiet for how many people were here. When she had first arrived here, it had been so loud and noisy, she had thought it was a festival. And after the uproar from yesterday, had they calmed down after a night's sleep? Or had they given up already? Not one single person looked angry. Their faces were expressionless.
"I'm sorry."
Vanille apologized again. She had already apologized so many times that she had lost count. It was their fault this was happening to these people. Their fault and no one else's.
"Because we woke up,"
she thought. And the girl who was made into a lassie by Fal'Cie Animal, and the little boy who was made into a lassie by the Cocoon Fal'Cie. How could she ever atone for their crimes she committed against them? She couldn't turn them back to normal. She wouldn't be able to change their fate.
"At least," she thought, "I can bring no harm to their world, to their loved ones. I can do that much for them."
At some point she realized the number of people had grown. Everyone was so quiet that she hadn't noticed. Now there were as many people as there had been at the fireworks festival, slowly walking towards the station. Finally, the station building came within sight. A soldier could be heard, yelling, "Would anyone who has not checked in their baggage please come this way?" There had been baggage checked in the day before, so the line by the counter was short. Once she entered inside the building, she saw soldiers with megaphones calling out instructions. Their uniforms were different from the other soldiers she had seen, so Vanille thought they must have a higher rank. "Everyone, please follow directions and do not step out of line. Your baggage will be returned to you once you've arrived on Pulse." The gun he held in his hands made Vanille a little uncomfortable.
"He's just giving directions. Why does he need to be armed?"
Vanille thought.
"All the people here are calm and peaceful. Why does he need a weapon?"
The other soldiers also held guns. Even though they kept saying these people were being transferred, it was far more like they were being escorted out of the city by force. But perhaps because the people on Cocoon are so peaceful, no one fought back. They all lined up quietly, without a word. Perhaps not quite. Somewhere she heard some yelling. "Hey you! Don't get out of line!" Perhaps someone had tried to run. The crowd of people moved slightly. They were restless, perhaps hoping that at least one of them had found a means of escape. A gunshot sounded. From the screens, you could tell it was no idle blast. The line of people shook, breaking into panic. The soldiers pointed their guns at the people, and everything grew still and quiet. "Please do not move from the line. This is for your own safety." Of course, no one actually believed that. They only kept quiet because they didn't wish to die here, even though what waited for them beyond this world was hell. The line once again flowed smoothly. Vanille spied a woman talking with a soldier. She noticed the woman because she looked exactly like Serah, the girl who turned into a pulseless sea. The woman handed her weapon to the soldier and stood in line.
"My guilt is making me imagine things," Vanille thought. "Just because she has the same hair color, it makes her face look just like Serah's."
A middle-aged man stood behind the woman. His hair looked just like a bird's nest, or so Vanille thought, but then a real bird actually popped out of it.
"What?"
It was a baby chocobo.
"Why does that guy have a chocobo living on his head?"
It was so funny, Vanille began to giggle. Then someone ran into her from behind. Or rather, she ran into someone, since she wasn't looking where she was going. She tried to catch her balance, but it was too late.
"Oops!"
She slipped and tumbled down onto the ground. Fortunately, she didn't hurt herself, except for perhaps her pride. "Are you okay?" someone asked. Just as she heard the voice, she felt a hand grab hers and pull her upright. "Did you get hurt?" A kind-looking woman was looking her over. Vanille nodded, and the woman smiled. Oh, what a relief.
She looks like a mother,
Vanille thought. Then she saw a boy standing beside her that looked like he could be her son. She really was a mother.
Are you from here?
No, I'm not.
Oh, you too. We're from Palampolum,
a place Vanille had heard of before.
And where did you come from?
Far.
Far?
Vanille nodded. The woman didn't ask any more questions, probably thinking Vanille had a reason for not saying where she was from. In fact, she probably had other things to worry about. Her son was shaking and wouldn't look up. Vanille couldn't decide whether she should line up behind these two or the woman who looked like Serah. But she didn't take too long to decide, standing beside the kind woman and her son. If she was going to be treated like a prisoner, she at least wanted to be with people who were kind. The soldiers explained that in the best case scenario, they would arrive at Pulse sometime today. At worst, it would be tomorrow.
Once we've arrived in Grand Pulse, I hope I can help them a little bit,
Vanille thought.
I'm sorry, Fang, but I'm going back to Grand Pulse with the fal'Cie. I'm sorry I broke our promise. I'm sorry I had to leave you on Cocoon all alone.
Once she left Cocoon, she wouldn't be able to complete her focus. She realized this yesterday when she heard that fal'Cie Anima would be sent back to Pulse. Once she realized there was still something she could do, she felt relieved.
Well, if it's too much to deal with, face it later.
Serah had said that 4 days ago, when they had met on the beach. Those words had saved her and pushed her into action. Because of those words, she was here now.
Once I get on that train, she thought, I'll be running away from my focus. Then I won't have to hurt anyone. I'll probably become a Cth. There'll still be some time left before that happens. Sometimes things seem easier when you look at them from a distance, you know?
Just as Serah had said, once she looked at her problem from a distance, she could see a different path. It just might work. If she just ran away, it might all work out. She only worried about leaving Fang behind, but she knew she would be alright. Her brand was burned, so she probably wouldn't turn into a Cth, and Fang would be able to live on her own. The only thing was, she knew Fang would be angry.
I'm sorry,
she whispered one more time. She put her fingers together and prayed. For a friend she wouldn't see again. For a promise she couldn't keep. The soldiers began directing people onto the train. At the latest, they would arrive tomorrow, Vanille remembered them saying. For a moment, Vanille felt her footsteps tremble. She suddenly felt as though the day they became l'Cie was only yesterday, and that tomorrow was so far away she could hardly reach it. But why? She couldn't be worried. She was finally returning to Grand Pulse, she told herself. She loved the smell of the wind, the flowers shimmering in the breeze, running out under an open sky. There were all the stars at night, and of course the people waiting back home. They were all her family, so she was sure they would be happy to see her.
Tomorrow, I'll be returning home,
Vanille thought to herself. The line moved forward. To be continued in Final Fantasy XIII. Hey guys, thanks for sticking out with this audiobook. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. This is the first time I've ever really done anything like this. So yeah, there's lots of things to be dissected here and lots of interesting things to learn. It is kind of sad that they put so much supplementary information into a outside media source, but there's no real action in this part, so I can see why they didn't want to turn it into a huge cutscene or anything. If anything, though, I guess it could have been a good movie. But anyway, check out my Let's Play of Final Fantasy XIII if you want to see how the story continues, if you haven't already. And then I'm also going to be doing Let's Plays of Final Fantasy XIII 2 and Lightning Returns when I finish Final Fantasy XIII 1. And also, I'm going to be doing audiobooks of the other Final Fantasy XIII novels, including Episode 1 and Fragments Before and Fragments After for 13 2. But I'll get to that when the time comes. Again, I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for checking out this audiobook, and thanks for visiting the TheScottSpot. I'll catch you guys later.